Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our global participants, and welcome to the Layer 123 OpenRAN webinar, a surrogate for 5G dominance. We have a very exciting program for you today, which will consist of three 20-minute presentations that will culminate in our super panel at 3:15 GMT. Please use the individual Zoom links sent to you for each session to log into the correct one, and also please use the Q&A function on the Zoom to ask any questions throughout the respective sessions, and these will be looked at by our speakers if time permits. Well, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to our keynote speaker for today, David Hutton, the Chief Engineer at the Telecom Infra Project. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Milad. Very great to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for Layer 123 and the sponsors of the event as well. I want to talk today about the Telecom project and the overall journey towards disaggregated networking and what that means. I'm the Chief Engineer of TIP. And I'm responsible for the technical strategy of the organization, and I'm really pleased to be talking on this subject today. So let's first set the stage here of what the opportunities are and the potential challenges for connectivity. I think the good news is that connectivity plays a significant part of society today and significant benefits to the economy. If like me, most of you are working from a home office, then connectivity is vital. There are other connectivity use cases that we'll be looking at in the 5G era to support other industry sectors like healthcare, like Industry 4.0, wireless factories, and there's also still the fact that we've been very successful in a quite short period of time in connecting over half the world. But I think we need to do a lot to connect the other half and improve the connectivity that we have. I live in the UK, and sometimes my 4G connectivity is not particularly great because I live in a rural area. So there are improvements that we can make, which is a good thing because there's a lot of value that is still left in providing connectivity. But providing that in the 5G era, whether it be with 5G new radio or Wi-Fi 6 or other types of access technologies, there are some barriers that we need to address. And one of those is looking at the supply chain. It's mainly dominated by three suppliers in the RAN market. And you can see some of the statistics here on a breakdown from particular different regions. I remember when I started in telecoms over 25 years ago, there were probably about 15 large-scale vendors out there who were making network equipment. So through consolidation of some of those, through some bad decisions of others, we're left with a very fragile supply chain at the moment. And one of the things that we need to do and progress beyond is help to build that up and make it a healthy environment again. The other aspect in terms of the barrier is really addressing the business economics. No matter how you look at it, it would be for 5G network densification or just putting more cell sites or more access points out there, we're looking at network densification. And that has a significant impact in terms of capital expenditure and operational expenditure. So you have to buy network equipment, you have to install it, you have to make sure that you have got the right level of backhaul, whether it's fiber, which can be expensive, or wireless connectivity back to a data center. And you also have to operate that. So the site operation and maintenance is expensive. Energy consumption only goes up when densification of network elements is put there as well. And so we need to find a way to address this. And we believe within the Telecom Infra project that looking at open and disaggregated networks will improve the business case for connectivity. So if you look on the left-hand side here, we have the single vendor, fully integrated network approach, whereby different network equipment is connected normally through proprietary interfaces, because they generally come from a single vendor, and those interfaces are tweaked or so-called optimized to work and perform better. Also, in terms of this model, the hardware and the software comes from the same single vendor as well. So it makes it quite difficult when you want to upgrade components, swap out components, or have a better choice of network components and upgrading networks and deploying new technology. On the right-hand side is what we are advocating for in the Telecom Infra project, and that's a multi-vendor disaggregated network solution. And that means that those interfaces have to be open and interoperable, and fully interchangeable, so I can interchange network components as and when I, as the operator, would see fit. But it's not just those open interfaces. I think it's quite important. We're starting to look at open and disaggregated networks by separating out the hardware and the software components. And this is very important. I think if you separate out the hardware components, you start to move a lot of the complexity of how networks operate into the software, which means that the hardware can be based on more on commercial off-the-shelf equipment. So inherently, you're driving down cost. By moving the complexity up to the software layer, the software development lifecycle is a lot quicker than hardware and software bind together. So speed of time to market can be for the better. Also, because now you can just be a single software vendor, and now you have an open market to play in the telecommunications sector because you're not bound by having that hardware platform as well. There's more innovation that we see coming through, and that should improve the vendor ecosystem as well. So how does TIP work? Well, TIP is a community, and it's a community of service providers, technology suppliers, system integrators, and connectivity stakeholders. And system integrators are going to play a really important part of what we do here. Once you start to disaggregate networks, when you want to deploy them, you need somebody to reaggregate them and install them and integrate them within the network function as well. So they play a part in our environment as well. We realize within the Telecom Infra project that we can't do this as a standalone organization. We want to work with other industry bodies as well, and that comes from working very closely with industry standards communities like 3GPP and the ORAN Alliance. We ourselves are not a standards organization. What we focus on is productization, test and validation, and getting equipment into market as quickly as possible to make sure that once a standard has been complete, that time to market is shortened as much as possible into commercial deployments. We work very closely with organizations such as GSMA and CTIA to stimulate where that market demand is coming from, and very closely with open source organizations as well, whether it be Linux Foundation or OpenStack or PNFV and others. So what value does TIP actually bring at the industry level? Well, I talked about productization, testing, and validation. So there's a clear industry need of moving towards a disaggregated approach. We've seen a lot of signals coming from operators globally that open disaggregated networks are something that they would like to address, particularly in terms of RAN, but across all of their network as well. We actually see that happening in terms of standards when we start to look at what 3GPP are doing in terms of a 5G core network architecture. So it's great to see this is being adopted. How do we address supply diversity and economies of scale? Well, we want to attract and bring new innovation into there. So we want to bring new vendors on board, but sometimes these vendors find it hard to compete and get on the radar of large scale operators and showcase their equipment. So we help to build industry roadmaps and orchestrate what that looks like based on open standards and network solutions. We build product requirements documents that help to influence those industry roadmaps and give a signal to that new vendor community what they need to prioritize in their R&D cycle themselves. And we need to make sure that the solutions that we're producing are mature and that they are commercially scalable, and that the operators who want to deploy them have confidence that they have the availability of products that are fully interoperable and interchangeable and have the same kind of feature parity level and security requirements as any other solution on the marketplace would as well. So to do that, we have a lot of focus on global test and solution validation. We have a number of community labs and market trials ongoing, and different stages of product maturity, from self-certification all the way through to making sure that a product is commercially available, and GA is something that we'll walk through in a moment as well. And ease of implementation, we need to showcase which products are available and how mature that they are. So we have an online marketplace where we list our vendor products, level of maturity through the TIP test and validation that we showcase. with our test badges and RFI templates, so that it's very easy for consumers, the operators, to understand which products are available and how they can actually deploy those. This is a view of how we actually do this. We have I'd say a 6-stage product lifecycle from ideation to deployment. And technical roadmaps here where we talk about everything being based on open standards technologies that is signaled by our operators, and they come in with their use cases and define and prioritize what they would like to see actually productized and ready for commercial deployment as quickly as possible. And that's because a lot of stuff that we do is based on open standards, and the standards community sometimes has a lot of content in there that may not necessarily be needed at this point in time for operators who want a commercial deployment. Different regions and different marketplaces have different priorities, so it's a good chance to reset from the commercial prioritization about what we need to put into the market. And we take that through and we build those technical requirements and put that through our test and validation, badge accordingly, and get that onto our online marketplace as discussed before. So in terms of ideation and definition, again, it's all industry standards to be applied, use cases that come from our operator community, and not just operators actually. We understand within the Telecom Infra project that a lot of this technology is going to be used by other industry sectors as well. So we want to hear what their particular use cases are and translate those into high-level technical requirements. And those technical requirements documents are what the vendors then will actually build towards. And that's really important, as I stated before, that if I'm a small vendor, I really would like to understand an aggregated view of what large operators and tier 2 operators and tier 3s would like to prioritize in terms of their build. That is invaluable information for me to do. And it's good for the operators as well, because they're steering those roadmaps of those new vendors who are building the new innovative and bringing those into their test environments. And as you can see on the right-hand side of this picture here, we have a network of TIP community labs where we focus on validating those end-to-end network configurations and products from those different suppliers. So we really need to achieve complete interoperability. We need to make sure that it's up to the performance requirements that the operators are setting, that everything is stable and secure. And we do this within, I think we have now 15 different community labs worldwide. And that ranges from North America to Latin America, through to the APAC region and Europe and Middle East as well. The next stage of that is to release and deploy and validate against those best practices and sharing of commercial deployments. And this is really key. Everything that we do in terms of our building together and testing together and putting things through into the field trials, we take information back from there and feed it back into our project groups to make sure that we're learning as we're developing and defining and building together. And this means that the next person who goes through a very similar field trial knows what some of the challenges will be, but also knows how those challenges were solved. And this speeds up deployments and accelerates deployment of disaggregated network technology. And as you can see on the right-hand side here, the TIP Exchange is where we showcase those products and solutions online. How do we do this? Well, we do this in a number of our product groups, and we don't just focus on one particular area of the network. We focus on access, transport, and core. Now, transport often gets overlooked, but it's a prime importance when we're talking about upgrading to next generation networks. So we have a lot of work going on within our open optical and packet transport groups, within our wireless backhaul groups. And our open core network is based on developing technologies and blueprints for a 5G open core network that satisfies the architecture for service-based architecture and a cloud native network. Again, on the access side, we do a lot of work on OpenRAN, so 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G technologies, but we also do a lot of work on Wi-Fi and non-terrestrial connectivity solutions. So whether that be HAPS or satellite level communication as well. So across all the different network layers. And we also understand that deploying these technologies is challenging, and we want to be able to address that as well. So whilst we do a lot of work focusing on individual products, we also need to look at how we can take all of those products in an end-to-end configuration to address specific connectivity challenges, whether that be connected city infrastructure to look at deployment and operationalizing of street assets in an urban environment, or network as a service in rural environments, which looks at different ways of deploying networks with NAS operators, and how that can work with existing operators as well, through to 5G private networks and enterprise scenarios. It's very important that we start to address those types of marketplaces as well to enable other industry sectors. And open automation, I think we all understand that a network, next generation network, or actually networks today, I should say, are going to require an increased level of automation to be able to run and operate those networks as well. So what are we building together? Well, this is an example of the field trials and commercial deployments that we already have. So across all those aspects, from access to transport and core network, these are the field trials and commercial deployments that we have ongoing. And you can see that this is happening globally. So this is really becoming a commercial reality. I'm very excited to see that every time I get a new version of this map, there's lots more green that pops up with different operators on there as well. And the diversity of those different types of operators is also very good to see, that it's coming from tier 1 operators all the way through down to tier 2s and tier 3s in various different regions to satisfy various different deployment scenarios. So we look at deployments for rural, but we also look at peri-urban and dense urban environments as well. So across all the different deployment strategies, utilizing which particular technology best satisfies what is required to solve that connectivity use case. Now, how do we apply this to OpenRAN? Well, this is an extrapolation of that disaggregated approach that we saw before. So again, on the left-hand side, you can see what a distributed BT solution would look like, or if you move to Cloud RAN, but there's still proprietary interfaces and fully integrated solutions on both hardware and software, to what we're looking at here on the right-hand side. So you can separate out your RU, DU, and CU as you see fit, or you can combine them in certain different deployment scenarios, but you should also be able to have different software from different vendors to be able to satisfy those as and when you choose. It's really up to the operator to choose the best of breed of which network equipment they utilize for satisfying their particular deployment requirements. And it also means that if there's a potential issue that they would see in a particular vendor solution that would require it to be upgraded or replaced, as it's based on software, that should be done remotely. And that's a huge benefit. That means that you don't need to go out to all the individual cell sites, whether it be 70,000 different cell sites in a particular country, to upgrade. This should make it much more easier to operate and maintain those networks as well. The OpenRAN project group that we have is focused into two main areas, focusing on segments and components. Segments are the type of deployment scenarios that we're talking about. So at the moment, that is chaired by China Unicom and T-Mobile, looking at indoor small cell deployments. There's a lot of interest in various different countries related to outdoor macro from Vodafone, Smartfren, Indosat, and TPG. And each of those relates down to particular components and products, from white box RUs to DUs and CUs. But I'm particularly interested in two new groups that we just created, focusing on RAN intelligence and automation, which is looking at AI and ML for non-real-time and near real-time RIC use cases. So for massive MIMO, for self-optimizing networks and energy efficiency, and other use cases as well. Also, the ROMA, OpenRAN orchestration lifecycle management automation, I think is going to be a really valuable piece of work that we're working on now as well. And lastly, just wanted to highlight the map again, but this is the map particular for global OpenRAN deployments and trials. I think this is a global phenomenon. We are achieving commercial scale. You've seen how we work as a community. It's very valuable for how we operate. And if you're not part of that community yet, then we really would love you to come and join us at the Telecom Infra project. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. And David's session, as well as all the upcoming presentations, will be available on demand post-event. I've also seen questions from Dan and Don. Don't worry, I'll relay those to David, and I'm sure David will get back to you post-event. Our OpenRAN security session will shortly begin, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you again, David.
Thank you.